She noticed the rifle before anyone noticed her. Why did the general slow his stride when he passed the firing line, just for a heartbeat, before continuing on as if nothing had happened? The Barrett .50 cal rested on its bipod like a sleeping animal, heavy, unforgiving, a weapon that demanded respect. Most men on the range gave it a wide berth unless it belonged to them. This one didn't. It sat alone, staged neatly, its data book open, its scope already dialed for conditions that hadn't yet been announced. And beside it stood a woman no one had bothered to acknowledge. She kept her shoulders relaxed, eyes down, hands moving with careful economy. Not nervous, not eager, just precise. The kind of stillness that came from repetition, not confidence borrowed from rank or reputation. Around her, voices carried easy arrogance, jokes, side comments, the kind that bloomed when men assumed the world was arranged for them. "She's with logistics, right? Contractor, I think. Wrong place to play soldier." She heard them, she always did, but she didn't react. Reaction wasted energy. What no one noticed, what no one ever noticed at first, was how she tracked everything without lifting her head. The wind flags downrange, the dust lifting unevenly off the berms, the slight shimmer of mirage forming earlier than forecasted. Her breathing adjusted before her mind consciously registered why. Ignored wasn't new. Invisible had been her shield for years. The general approached the line with his entourage trailing half a step behind, boots crunching in rhythm. He had the posture of someone long removed from needing to prove anything. Power had settled into him like gravity. As he passed the rifle, his eyes flicked down. Just for a second. Then he stopped. The range seemed to hold its breath. He turned back slowly, gaze narrowing, not at the weapon but at the woman beside it. "What unit is this rifle assigned to?" he asked. No one answered at first. The silence stretched uncomfortable. The woman didn't look up. The general's eyes dropped again, this time lower, to her collar. To the small, almost hidden pin caught beneath the lanyard of her contractor badge. And something changed in his face. Not anger. Recognition. He lifted a hand, stopping his aides cold. "Everyone stay where you are." The woman finally raised her eyes. Green, steady, tired in a way sleep didn't fix. She knew what he'd seen. And she'd hoped, foolishly, that today wouldn't be the day. Because once dignity was recognized, it could never go back to hiding. Why did her hands know the rifle's weight before she touched it? She adjusted the rear bag with a movement so subtle it looked accidental. Her fingers pressed the stock like an old habit checking a pulse. Around her, soldiers shifted, suddenly alert, suddenly aware that something had changed. A master sergeant stepped forward, irritation sharp in his voice. "Sir, she's just a contractor, equipment support. Probably set that up for inspection." The woman exhaled slowly. "Just once." The general didn't take his eyes off her collar. "Remove your badge," he said. The command wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Her jaw tightened. A flicker, regret maybe, passed behind her eyes. She unclipped the lanyard and let it fall into her palm. The pin was fully visible now. Small, unassuming. A skull framed by crosshairs. 12 tiny stars etched so faintly they vanished unless the light hit them just right. The general swallowed. "Where did you get that?" he asked. The range felt suddenly too exposed, too open, too many ears. She hesitated, not because she feared him, but because answering meant reopening doors she'd welded shut. "It's old," she said finally. "It doesn't mean anything anymore." A lie, not a malicious one, just a tired one. The general stepped closer, his voice lowering. "That pin is only issued once, and never recovered." The master sergeant scoffed. "Sir, with respect, that unit doesn't exist," the general finished, eyes still locked on her. "That's what we told the world." He turned to her fully now. You walked past a .50 caliber rifle like it was furniture. You set wind calls before the flags were raised. And you wear a ghost 7-pin like someone who forgot how dangerous it is to remember. Her hands curled slowly into fists. Ignored had been safe. Seen was something else entirely. She met his gaze. My name is Dakota, she said, and I don't belong here. The general studied her face, not looking for rank, not looking for defiance, looking for truth. What was your call sign? He asked quietly. She closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Reaper, she said. And the range shattered into silence. Why did no one breathe after that? The name didn't echo. It didn't need to. It landed heavy, like something long buried hitting stone. A few of the older soldiers exchanged glances, confusion mixed with something closer to fear. Legends had a way of doing that, especially the ones no one admitted to believing. The master sergeant laughed too loud. Sir, this is getting out of hand. Anyone can claim. Enough, the general snapped. He turned back to her, voice softer now. You vanished. I chose to, she replied. People don't leave Ghost 7, he said. She almost smiled. Almost. People leave when staying costs more than they can afford. Her eyes drifted past him downrange, where steel targets waited in quiet indifference. She remembered other places, other ranges, places where steel wasn't the thing that rang when you hit it. What are you doing here, Reaper? The general asked. She hesitated. This was the part that always broke something open. My daughter got sick, she said. Leukemia. I needed time, insurance, a life where I could tuck her in at night instead of counting breaths through a scope. The general nodded slowly. No pity, just understanding. And the rifle, he asked. She glanced at it. Old habits don't die, they just wait. A long pause. Then the general turned sharply. Clear the line. What? Someone protested. I said clear the line. Reluctantly, soldiers stepped back. The range officer hesitated, then nodded. The general looked at her again. Can you still shoot? He asked. The question wasn't a challenge. It was a door. She stared at the rifle. The truth pressed up against her ribs. I never stopped, she said. When she lay prone, the world narrowed. Noise faded. Judgment vanished. The rifle fit her like memory. Her breathing slowed. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. The shot broke between heartbeats. The steel rang. Dead center. A murmur rippled. She cycled the bolt. Another shot. Another ring. Distances increased. Wind shifted. She adjusted without looking. At the furthest target, the one no one bothered with anymore, she waited. She felt the moment before it arrived. Then fired. The delay stretched. And then, faint but unmistakable, steel sang. She rose slowly, handing the rifle back. Silence swallowed the range. The general exhaled. Some legends don't fade, he said quietly. They just go quiet. She looked at her hands. I wasn't hiding, she said. I was healing. Why did redemption feel heavier than exile? They gathered around her afterward, not with applause, not with cheers, with questions they didn't yet know how to ask. The master sergeant stood stiff, shame written across his face. I misjudged you. Yes, she said simply. It wasn't cruel, just honest. The general approached one last time. We could use you, training, advisory, nothing that takes you away from your daughter. She thought of hospital rooms, of beeping machines, of tiny fingers gripping hers. I'll teach, she said, but I don't hunt anymore. He nodded. That might be the most important lesson of all. As the crowd slowly dispersed, she reattached her badge, covered the pin again. Invisible once more. But different. The rifle remained on the line, unmoved. waiting for the next hands to learn respect. She walked away without looking back. Because dignity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand belief. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak at all. It simply acts. Why did the silence follow her, even after she stepped away from the firing line? Dakota felt it on her back as she walked, eyes tracking her, thoughts colliding, assumptions quietly dying. The range had returned to motion, but something fundamental had shifted. Conversations were lower now, more careful, like men realizing they had been speaking too loudly in a room that was never theirs. She didn't slow her pace. The gravel crunched beneath her boots, each step measured, deliberate. She moved toward the equipment shelter, the place no one important ever lingered. A safe corner, shadows, routine. That was where she belonged. Or at least, where she had learned to exist. Her hands trembled for the first time that morning as she reached for a crate of ammunition. Not fear, not adrenaline, something heavier. The kind of aftershock that came when the past brushed too close to the present. Reaper. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. It used to live in whispers, in encrypted radios, in mission briefs that ended with silence instead of applause. A name that never appeared on paper, never showed up in citations. A name that belonged to someone who didn't get to be human. She flexed her fingers, grounding herself in sensation. Cold metal, oil, familiar weight. Behind her, boots stopped. She didn't turn. "Why here?" the general asked. His voice was different now. Less authority, more curiosity, maybe even restraint. She continued stacking rounds by lot number before answering. Because no one looks too closely at contractors. We're useful, replaceable, invisible. He studied her profile, the way she moved without wasted motion, the way she kept her body angled, always aware of space, exits, lines of sight. "You could have disappeared completely," he said. "New name, new country." She finally looked at him. "I tried," she said, "but ghosts don't travel well. We leave fingerprints in places we don't mean to." The wind shifted. She felt it before the flags reacted. He followed her gaze. "You still read everything like it's a battlefield." She gave a small, humorless smile. "It is, just quieter." A pause settled between them. "What happened after you left?" he asked. Her jaw tightened. This was the part no one ever wanted to hear. Not the missions, not the shots, the aftermath. "I slept for 12 hours straight," she said. "Then I woke up and didn't know what to do with my hands." The general didn't interrupt. "I kept reaching for things that weren't there," she continued. "Rifle, radio, knife. I couldn't stand in grocery stores. Too many blind corners. I memorized exits in movie theaters. I sat with my back to walls even at my daughter's school meetings." Her voice stayed even. "That was the skill. You learned it early." "And the shooting?" he asked. She looked back toward the range, where steel still swayed faintly. "I never stopped," she said. "I just stopped aiming at people." Silence again, but this one felt earned. Behind them, the master sergeant approached hesitantly. His confidence had been replaced by something closer to humility. "Ma'am, Reaper." She turned sharply. Her eyes were calm, but something in them warned him. "Dakota," she said. "That name exists here. Use it." He nodded quickly. "Dakota, sir asked me to check the rifle logs. That Barrett, the adjustments you made. They're not standard." "No," she agreed. "They're accurate." He swallowed. "We've been compensating wrong for months." She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Because you're fighting the wind," she said, "instead of listening to it." Confusion flickered across his face. She picked up a data book, flipped to a blank page, and sketched quickly. Lines, arrows, curves that looked more like art than math. "Wind isn't a wall," she said. "It's a conversation. It moves in layers. It bends around terrain. If you treat it like a constant, it'll punish you." The master sergeant leaned closer despite himself. "You learned this where?" he asked. She paused. "Places that don't show up on maps," she said. He nodded slowly, understanding without fully understanding. When he left, the general exhaled. "You're already teaching." She closed the book. "Old habits." He studied her. "You said you don't hunt anymore." "I don't," she replied. "But you still protect," he said. Her expression softened just slightly. "Yes." Another pause. "Your daughter," he said carefully. "How old?" 7, she answered. "She likes astronomy, says the stars make her feel less afraid." He smiled faintly. "Smart kid." "She is," Dakota said, pride slipping through before she could stop it. The general's tone shifted. "If we make this official training advisory, you won't just be invisible, people will watch you." She considered that. "I've been watched my whole life," she said. "The difference now is I choose who gets to see me." The wind kicked up harder, dust lifting across the range. Somewhere a steel target creaked. She looked out over the distance. "You know," she said quietly, "the hardest part about leaving wasn't giving up the rifle." "No," he asked. "It was accepting that I could do everything right and still lose," she said. "Out there, we tell ourselves precision equals control, but sometimes the world doesn't care how perfect your math is." Her voice dropped. "Sometimes the bullet flies true, and it still breaks something you can't fix." The general said nothing. She set the ammo crate down and straightened, shoulders squaring, not in defiance but resolve. "If I stay," she said, "I teach fundamentals, judgment, restraint. I teach them how to live with the shot they take and the ones they don't." He met her gaze. "That's exactly why I asked." Across the range, a younger soldier watched her from afar. Awe, curiosity, hope. Dakota noticed him. She always noticed. She wondered who he'd be after his first impossible choice. As the sun climbed higher, the range resumed its rhythm. Shots cracked, steel rang, orders echoed. But beneath it all, something deeper moved, like a current changing direction. Dakota clipped her badge back into place, covering the pin once more. Not because she was ashamed, but because some symbols carried weight best borne quietly. She walked back toward the line, not as a legend, not as a ghost, but as someone who had survived long enough to teach others how to carry the cost. And somewhere inside her, buried beneath discipline and scars, a fragile thing stirred. Not pride, not fear, hope. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't just standing near a rifle. She was standing near a future. Why did she hesitate before stepping onto the range the next morning, like someone returning to a place that once took everything? Dawn hadn't fully broken when Dakota arrived. The sky hung low and colorless, the kind of quiet that existed only before the world remembered itself. She preferred this hour. Fewer eyes, fewer questions, fewer reminders of who she used to be. The rifle rack stood empty for now. Targets waited downrange, silhouettes barely visible through the thin mist hugging the ground. Wind flags drooped, deceptive in their stillness. She knew better. She always did. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket. She didn't need to look to know who it was. She stepped away from the line, answering softly. "Yes, sweetheart." A pause, then a small smile broke through her controlled expression. "That's amazing," she said. "I knew you would." She listened, eyes drifting to the horizon. "No, I'll be home tonight, I promise." She ended the call and stood there for a moment longer than necessary, letting the sound of her daughter's voice anchor her. That voice had pulled her back from places no one else ever could. Behind her, footsteps approached. "You don't flinch," the master sergeant said, stopping a respectful distance away. "Not at rifles, not at rank, but your phone." She didn't turn. "Some battles deserve all your attention." He nodded slowly, absorbing that. More soldiers filtered in, quieter than the day before. Word had spread, but not the details, just enough to shift behavior, just enough to make people watch their tone. They lined up instinctively, waiting. Dakota noticed everything. The way one man favored his left knee, the way another adjusted his sling too often, the tension in shoulders trying too hard to look relaxed. She stepped forward. "Before anyone touches a weapon," she said, voice calm but carrying, "we're going to talk." That alone unsettled them. "About shooting?" someone asked. "No," she replied, "about waiting." Confusion rippled through the group. She paced slowly in front of them, hands clasped behind her back. "The movies get it wrong," she said. "They think sniping is about pulling the trigger. It's not. It's about the hours you don't." She stopped in front of a young corporal, whose jaw was tight with anticipation. "You ever hold your breath so long you thought you'd pass out?" she asked him. "Yes, ma'am," he said quickly. She shook her head. "No, I don't mean physically, I mean morally." Silence settled. "In my old unit," she continued, "we didn't measure success by shots taken. We measured it by restraint, by moments when you could end a life and chose not to." The master sergeant shifted. "With respect, ma'am, hesitation can get people killed." She met his eyes, so can impatience. She turned back to the group. "Today, no one fires a round until I say so." A few brows furrowed. No one argued. They moved into position. Rifles were checked, scopes calibrated, breathing steadied. Dakota walked behind them, correcting posture with a tap, a quiet word, a subtle adjustment. "You're fighting the rifle," she murmured to one. "Let it rest." To another, "Your heart rate is leading your shot. Slow it down." She stopped behind the master sergeant last. "Why did you join?" she asked him quietly. He stiffened. "To serve." "That's not an answer," she said. He hesitated. Then, "My brother didn't come home. I needed to believe it meant something." She nodded. "Then you already understand more than you think." Minutes passed, no shots. The wind shifted. Dakota felt it crawl across her skin like a warning. "Now," she said suddenly. They fired. Shots cracked in staggered rhythm. Steel rang unevenly. She watched the impacts through her scope, reading patterns, not results. "Stop," she called. They froze. "You see that?" she asked, pointing downrange. "Every one of you hit, and every one of you missed something." She knelt, drawing lines in the dirt. "The wind didn't change," she said. "You did. You rushed because you were told to wait, and waiting made you uncomfortable." She stood. In combat, discomfort kills faster than ignorance. The words hung heavy. She moved to her own rifle, settling behind it without ceremony. Her body remembered before her mind needed to. She didn't fire. Instead, she waited. Seconds stretched, a minute too. The soldiers watched, puzzled. Then she spoke, still looking through the scope. "There." She fired. The steel rang dead center. "That window," she said, rising, "lasted less than 2 seconds. If you'd chased the shot earlier, you'd have missed. If you'd hesitated longer, the wind would have shifted again." She met their eyes. Patience isn't passive, it's aggressive control. The general watched from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. By midday, fatigue set in. Muscles ached, focus wavered. Dakota saw it. "Pack up," she ordered. Relief flickered across faces, then confusion. "We're done?" someone asked. "No," she said, "you are." They gathered their gear reluctantly. As they dispersed, the master sergeant lingered. "You ever regret it?" he asked quietly, walking away. She thought of hospital corridors, of small hands, of nights without gunfire. "No," she said, "but I regret believing walking away meant forgetting." He nodded, understanding settling in his eyes. As the range emptied, Dakota remained standing alone with the wind. She unclipped her badge, staring at the pin beneath. For years, it had been a burden. Now, it felt like a responsibility. She clipped it back on, covered once more, and turned toward the exit. Behind her, the range stood silent. But the lessons lingered. And somewhere between restraint and resolve, Dakota felt something she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. Not closure, but purpose. Why did the memory return now, sharp and uninvited, just as she thought she had found her footing again? Dakota was halfway through the parking lot when the sound reached her. A crack. Not a gunshot, not here, not now. But close enough in tone that her body reacted before her mind could correct it. Her shoulders tensed, her breath caught, her hand curled, searching for a rifle that wasn't there. Then the sound repeated, metal on metal, a dropped tool, harmless. She exhaled slowly, forcing her pulse to slow. This was the part no one ever filmed, the cost that followed you home. She sat in her car without starting it, palms resting on the steering wheel until the tremor passed. The sky had darkened. Clouds pressed low, promising rain that never quite arrived. Her phone vibrated again. A message this time. She asked if stars can get sick too. Dakota closed her eyes. No, she typed back. Stars burn until they're done. Then they make room for something new. She stared at the message, wondering if she was answering her daughter or herself. The drive home was quiet, radio off, windows cracked just enough to let the outside world remind her she was still in it. She pulled into the small apartment complex just as the first drops of rain hit the windshield. Her daughter was waiting at the door before she even shut the engine off. Mom! The word hit harder than any recoil ever had. Dakota knelt, catching her as she ran, breathing in the smell of shampoo and paper, and something sweet she couldn't name. Hey, Stargazer, she said softly. They sat on the floor later, books spread between them, the TV murmuring in the background. Dakota traced constellations with her finger while her daughter followed, wide-eyed. Do they ever get lonely? The girl asked. Dakota hesitated. Yes, she said honestly, but they're never really alone. That night after her daughter fell asleep, Dakota stood on the balcony, watching the rain turn streetlights into blurred halos. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she felt, and younger than she feared. She thought she'd left the hardest nights behind her. She was wrong. The call came just before midnight. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Almost. This is Dakota, she said quietly. A pause, then a voice she hadn't heard in years. Reaper. Her spine went rigid. I told you not to use that name, she said. I wouldn't, the voice replied, if this weren't bad. The world narrowed. Talk, she said. There was an incident, the voice continued. Training accident, one of ours froze, hesitated. Dakota closed her eyes. Is he alive? She asked. Yes, the voice said, but someone else is. Silence swallowed the line. They want you to come in, the voice added, off the books just to talk to him. Dakota leaned her forehead against the glass. I don't do that anymore, she said. I know, the voice replied. That's why we're asking. She ended the call without answering. Inside, her daughter slept peacefully, one hand curled around a stuffed astronaut. Dakota watched her breathe. Every choice she'd ever made led back to moments like this. She didn't sleep. Morning came gray and heavy. At the range, the mood had shifted. The easy focus of training had been replaced by tension. Whispers moved faster than bullets ever did. The general found her near the equipment shed. You got a call, he said. It wasn't a question. She nodded once. They lost someone, she said. He didn't ask who. They want you involved, he said. Yes. And she met his gaze. And I don't know if I can help without breaking something I just started to fix. He considered that. Leadership isn't about being unbroken, he said. It's about knowing what you can carry and what you can't. She looked past him toward the range. I spent years carrying things no one ever saw, she said. I'm tired. I know, he replied, but sometimes the weight isn't about you anymore. That landed harder than she expected. The soldiers gathered, sensing something was wrong. The master sergeant approached, concern etched deep. You okay? He asked. She nodded, then stopped herself. No, she said, but I will be. That honesty surprised them both. Training continued, but she changed it. No live fire. Observation only. She had them watch targets without shooting. Note movement, timing, wind, the urge to act. Today isn't about control, she told them. It's about restraint under pressure. One of the younger soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, is this because of what happened? She studied him. Yes, she said, and because of what almost happened to all of you. The day dragged, the sky never cleared. When the sun finally dipped, Dakota made her decision. She approached the general as he packed his things. I'll talk to him, she said. He nodded, no relief in his expression, only respect. But I don't go back in, she added. I don't take a rifle, I don't cross that line again. That's fair, he said. That night Dakota packed a small bag. Not gear, just clothes, a notebook, her daughter's drawing of the stars. Before leaving, she knelt by the bed. Mom has to help someone tomorrow, she whispered. Her daughter stirred. You'll come back. Dakota swallowed. Yes, she said, I always do. As she closed the door behind her, the weight returned, not as fear but as memory. Some shots echo long after the sound fades. And sometimes the hardest trigger to pull is the one inside yourself. Why did the road feel longer when she wasn't carrying a rifle, like something essential had been left behind on purpose? Dakota drove through the night, the highway stretching ahead in pale ribbons under the headlights. No convoy, no radio chatter, no call signs whispered in clipped urgency. Just asphalt, distance, and the quiet hum of a car that didn't know what it was carrying. She hadn't told her daughter where she was going, only that she'd be back. Promises mattered more when they were simple. At a rest stop somewhere between memory and obligation, she pulled over and stepped out into the cold air. The sky was clear here, stars scattered across it without pattern or apology. Her daughter would have loved this. Dakota leaned against the car, looking up, letting the vastness remind her how small one person could be, and how much damage one decision could still do. She thought about the young soldier, the one who froze. People loved to talk about courage as if it were loud, as if it announced itself, but fear was quieter. Fear crept in sideways, settled into your hands, your breath, your timing. Fear didn't scream. Fear waited. She drove on. The facility appeared just before dawn. No markings, no flags, just concrete and steel pretending not to exist. The guard at the gate didn't ask for identification. He already knew. Inside, the air smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Familiar, unwelcome. A man waited for her at the end of the hall. Older now, thinner. The years hadn't been kind, but they hadn't broken him either. You look different, he said. So do you, Dakota replied. They didn't shake hands. He led her to a small room with no windows and two chairs facing each other. A table sat between them. On it, a file she didn't touch. He's in observation, the man said, physically fine. And the rest, she asked. He hesitated. That's why you're here. They let her in alone. The young soldier sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He looked up when she entered, eyes wide, not with recognition but with dread. She closed the door behind her gently. "Dakota," she said, "I'm not here to judge you." He swallowed. "They said you were, that you'd understand." She pulled a chair back and sat, keeping space between them. Space mattered. "Tell me what you remember," she said. His breathing quickened. "I saw it," he said. "The opening, the shot was there, clear, but then," his voice cracked. "Then I thought about his face, about what would happen after." Dakota nodded slowly. "And your finger didn't move," she said. He shook his head, shame flooding his expression. "I froze." "And someone else fired," she said softly. "Yes." "And they missed," she finished. Tears slid down his face. He didn't wipe them away. "I killed him," the soldier whispered. Dakota leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "No," she said firmly, "you didn't." He looked up, desperate. "But if I had just—" "If you had taken the shot," she said, "you might still be carrying him with you, or you might be carrying someone else, or you might be dead." She paused, choosing each word with care. "The lie they tell us," she continued, "is that hesitation is weakness. It's not. It's humanity colliding with training. The danger isn't freezing. The danger is never learning how to move again afterward." He stared at her, breathing uneven. "Can you still move?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "I think so." "That's enough for today," she said. When she stood to leave, he spoke again. "Did you ever freeze?" he asked. She stopped at the door. "Yes," she said, "and I'm still here." Outside, the man from the hall waited. "Well?" he asked. "He's alive," Dakota said. "Make sure he stays that way." "You won't stay?" the man asked quietly. She shook her head. "I taught him the part that matters. The rest isn't mine anymore." The drive back felt different, lighter, heavier, both. She reached the range just as training ended for the day. Soldiers moved with a new kind of awareness now, less bravado, more thought. The master sergeant saw her first. "You left," he said. "And I came back," she replied. He nodded. "That matters." The general joined them, eyes searching her face. "You did what you needed to," he said. "Yes," she agreed, "and I remembered why I stopped." She walked out onto the empty range, standing where the .50 cal had rested days before. The ground still bore the imprint of its bipod. She crouched, pressing her palm into the dirt. For years, she'd believed redemption meant returning to who she was. She understood now that it meant choosing who she would be instead. Her phone buzzed. A picture. Her daughter holding up a paper telescope, smiling so wide it hurt. Dakota smiled back at the screen. She stood, dusted off her hands, and walked away from the firing line without looking back. Some weapons were meant to be set down. Some lessons were meant to be carried forward. And sometimes the bravest thing a sniper could do was lower the rifle, breathe out, and let the future live. Why did the range feel smaller now, like a place she had outgrown without realizing it? The morning light came in low and pale, sliding across the gravel and steel like it was searching for something it might not find. Dakota stood at the edge of the range, hands in her jacket pockets, listening. Not to shots, not to commands, to the spaces between them. She had learned, over years she couldn't count cleanly anymore, that the spaces were where truth lived. The soldiers were already there, setting up without being told. Their movements weren't perfect, but they were intentional. That mattered more. She watched them for a long moment before stepping forward. "Before we start," she said, voice carrying without force, "I want you to understand something." They turned toward her. No chatter, no smirks, just attention. "I'm not here to make you faster," she continued, "or deadlier. If that's all you wanted, you didn't need me." A few shifted, uncertain. "I'm here to make you honest," she said. "Honest about what you feel when the shot is there. Honest about what happens after." The master sergeant met her eyes and nodded once. She moved among them, checking rifles, adjusting slings, not correcting as much as confirming. "You," she said to one, "breathe too shallow when you're stressed." He blinked. "I didn't realize." "No one does," she said. "That's why it's dangerous." To another, "You close your left eye right before you fire. That's not recoil fear, that's doubt." The soldier swallowed. "How do I fix it?" "You don't," Dakota said. "You acknowledge it. Doubt ignored becomes panic. Doubt respected becomes judgment." They absorbed that quietly. She stepped back, scanning the line one last time. "Today," she said, "is your last day with me." A ripple moved through them. Not disappointment exactly, but something close. "I'm not disappearing," she added. "I'm just not staying in front." She gestured to the master sergeant. "He is." He stiffened. "Ma'am." She raised a hand. "You already know what to teach. You just needed permission to teach it your way." He hesitated, then nodded. "I won't waste it." "I know," she said. She stepped off the line, letting him take her place. The shift was subtle, but it mattered. As training resumed, Dakota watched from the side. The shots were slower now, more deliberate, fewer rounds wasted, more conversations happening in the quiet moments. The general approached, stopping beside her. "You're leaving," he said. "Yes." "For good." She considered that, for now. He studied her profile. "You changed something here." "So did they," she replied. "It wasn't one-sided." He nodded. "If you ever want." She smiled gently. "I know where to find you." They stood together, watching as one of the younger soldiers lowered his rifle, choosing not to take a shot that didn't feel right. No one scolded him. That felt like progress. By midday, the range was quiet again. Gear packed, targets retrieved, lessons settling into places that would only reveal themselves later under pressure. Dakota walked the length of the firing line one last time. She stopped where the .50 cal had once rested, where the general had paused, where everything had shifted. She knelt and brushed her fingers across the dirt, feeling the faint grooves left behind. For years she had believed her worth lived in precision, in numbers, in outcomes. She understood now that it lived in restraint, in what she refused to become again. Her phone vibrated. A message from her daughter. "Did you find the stars?" Dakota smiled. "I never lost them," she typed back. "I just forgot to look up." The drive home felt shorter this time, not because the distance had changed, but because she had. That evening, they lay on the living room floor together, lights off, glow-in-the-dark constellations scattered across the ceiling. Her daughter pointed eagerly, nomming stars with the confidence of someone who believed the universe listened. "Mom," she said suddenly, "are you brave?" Dakota hesitated. "I try to be," she said. Her daughter considered this. "I think brave is when you're scared and still choose the good thing." Dakota swallowed hard. "Yes," she said softly, "I think that's exactly what it is." Later, after her daughter fell asleep, Dakota stood on the balcony again. The city hummed below, alive and indifferent. She unclipped her badge and held the pin in her palm. Ghost 7. Reaper. Names that once defined her. She tucked the pin into a small box beside hospital bracelets, folded letters, and a crayon drawing of a woman holding a star. Some parts of her past deserved rest. She stepped back inside and closed the door gently behind her. Somewhere, soldiers would face moments she could never stand beside them for, choices she couldn't make for them, shots she would never hear. That was as it should be. Because strength wasn't about standing at the center of the fight forever. Sometimes, strength was knowing when to step away and trusting what you left behind to stand on its own. Dakota turned off the lights and walked down the hall, the quiet no longer heavy, but full. And in that stillness, one final truth settled into place. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't demand to be seen or remembered. Sometimes dignity simply acts, and then has the courage to let go.